Yep. Have you ever wondered what was out there in the night sky? Stared up at the stars in the hopes of seeing something out of the ordinary? Have you heard unexplainable noises coming from a vacant room, or watched a shadow cross the wall in front of you? Have you asked yourself if there is life after this one, or if you had life before? What about strange creatures that are mythical and elusive? Have you experienced deja vu or felt a prompting to leave because you felt you were in danger? If you have, you were on the fringe. Welcome to On the Fringe. Man, Mark's not here tonight. I'm Philip, and like usual, we have Pam, Jess, and we have our first guest in a long time, Brian Terrell. He's one of the gentlemen behind Red Dirt Cryptids. We're going to get into cryptids tonight. I'm excited. It's been a long time since we've had a good guest on. And if you're watching, maybe you're catching up later, whatever. This is the start of the change to strictly On the Fringe. Like I said, what's that? Uh-oh. Am I blanking out or are you guys?
What's up?
You seem fine.
I am.
I am not sure.
Uh-oh.
Is it you? Is it me?
Okay. I'm just, hey, Alicia. Well, I see a couple of you guys freezing up a little bit.
Uh-oh.
Anyway, this is the first of the transition to On the Fringe and actually having two separate podcasts. Developed a new opener last night. That's what I played for you guys here. So we're going strictly. We've already got our channel up for YouTube. I got to throw this on there to get a video going so it's easier to find. But we're trying to open up the algorithm a little bit because I think the algorithm is being confused because of both shows being on the same YouTube channel. So hopefully it'll help out. If not, oh well. I mean, we have our own separate shows now, so it's more official. Anyway, like I said, we have Brian Terrell with us, and we'll just get into it. Brian, I know you and we met a couple of years ago at the Paracon.
Yeah.
And, through Jess, Pam, Mark, all those guys chatted a little bit, but it's such a busy day. It's hard to really get to know somebody. And thought, heck, we're trying to turn over a new leaf. We want to try to get more guests on. So we'll, we figured, why not start with Brian? He's got some cool stories. And, maybe tonight, you're more than welcome to share whatever you want to share. The one story that I heard you tell at the Paracon was the story about you think it was a juvenile in you guys' camp down. Was it down by Broken Bow? Wasn't it down in the Wichita National Forest?
Yeah. Yeah. It's just north of Broken Bow Lake in the Washita National Forest. And that was probably like 2019. And actually, I think there was two of them actually. And that was a really exciting night. And it all kind of boiled down to dumb luck. Me and the guys were going to go down there. I think Micah Doan and Jeff Hatfield were with me. And we just kind of like randomly picked a place on a map. And bada bing, it happened like the very first night we got there. And I was totally not prepared. I didn't put out my audio recorders. I'll be honest with you, I didn't really think anything was going to happen, let alone something this epic. And so I was very unprepared. I went to bed sleeping in my hammock, and all I had was I think all I really had was my Glock. And I was just kind of sleeping with it like I always do on my belly. And next thing you know, about 1 o'clock in the morning, boom, I start hearing this weird noise. And when I first woke up, I was like, what in the hell was that? It was a popping noise, And I was just like, what is that? And I listened for a little bit, nothing happened. And I started to doze off again, and then I heard it again. I was like, all right, what is that, And it sounded like, when you was a kid, you used to do those mouth pop noises where you pop the top of your roof of your tongue or whatever, like that. But it was like so much deeper and so much louder and so much more powerful. And I was just like, what in the heck was that? So I'm sitting here listening. And that's when I realized I could hear something walking around the perimeter of our camp. And there was two creatures. And one was, I guess you could say, to the north. And that creature was the one that was doing the mouth pops. And it was stationary. It really wasn't moving around. The other one was walking around bipedally around the perimeter of our camp, and it was kind of doing like this I don't know. It was like it was checking us out. Well, this goes on for like 20 or 30 minutes, right? And I can hear this thing walking around, and about every 5 or 10 minutes, I hear this thing make this loud mouth pop noise. Just really loud. And every time it would do it, I'd be like, "Oh my gosh, whatever it is, there's two of them." And I could tell that whatever this was walking on two legs, because four-legged creatures are, you can tell by the sound. But so anyway, all of a sudden the thing kind of starts coming over and starts coming close to me, and I'm like, "Uh-oh, it's really close to me." But I've got this hammock over the top, or I got this tarp over the top of my hammock, and I can't really see where this thing is. And I can tell it's coming closer and closer and closer. So I'm getting like really, really edgy, and I'm sitting here feeling for my gun, and I'm like, oh God, I don't even have a round chambered in this thing, it's just, and I don't know what you guys know about guns, but there's no quiet way
No.
to chamber a round.
Not at all.
No. So I'm sitting here, I'm like, I got one hand on the slide and one hand down here, and I'm like ready because I think I'm fixing to get jumped. And what ends up happening is this thing creeps to about 15 feet from, probably less than that. It was probably 7 or 8 feet outside of my tarp, and it stepped on a stick, and it goes crunch. And when it did that, there was this very human reaction. It goes, ugh, like, I mean, oh, forgive me, I'm getting over something, but
That's all right.
it was so funny because looking back on it, because it was a very natural reaction. And I was like, oh my God, I just ghosted myself. So that was it. I was done. I come flying out of my hammock. Like I set the land speed record for a fat boy getting out of the hammock. And I'm flying out there. I've got a round. I chamber around. I don't even have a flashlight, and I'm yelling at Jeff, and I'm pretty much. I was scared. I was pretty scared. I didn't know what the heck this thing was, and whatever it was, I heard it run away very quickly back to what would be like the southeast and kind of away from the other one. And I get Jeff up. Jeff shining his flashlight. I'm struggling. I'm looking around, and I'm just finally I calm down. I'm like, I'm kind of like, oh my gosh, this is what I'm here for. I just need to relax. So I was like, well, I hope I haven't messed this up. So I go back to bed. I went over and got in my car and got my audio recorder, but I wasn't smart apparently. So I just went and got back in bed, and I'm sitting there laying there, and about 40 minutes later, I don't know, it was like 30, 40 minutes later, they came back. I don't think the one that was just to the north of me, the one was making I don't think it ever left. I think it was hiding because it starts back up, same place. And I never heard it run away or come back, but I heard the other one come back, and it goes back and it starts going through the camp, and this time it's getting even ballsier, and it walks right by my buddy Micah's uh, tent, and he's in there asleep. And fun fact, this whole episode, he slept through everything,
Oh my
and
God.
this was the moment that Micah decided to go ahead and get hearing aids. That's a different story. But anyway, so this thing is walking around over there. I can hear it getting in the trash bag. We had a trash bag that we had some little bit of trash in, and I could hear it, and it was like going in the trash can, and it was pulling out. We had a couple of those little bitty single serving chips that was in there, and you could hear those bags crinkling where it was maybe sticking its finger in there and trying to get a taste of it or whatever. And then we heard the unmistakable sound that everybody knows of one of those old plastic hinges, Coleman coolers opening up, the ones that when they open up, they go, and this thing goes, and it stops. You can tell he's like, oh crap, it's making noise. And he kind of listens. Then he goes ahead and he opens it up. He goes, and you hear it open. And this one here, Micah has had this cooler forever. If you just don't touch it, it'll stay with the lid up because the hinges are tight. And it's quiet for a couple of seconds, and then it goes ahead and it shuts the lid on the cooler. And I was like, oh my gosh. Well, the cooler was on the ground next to Micah's truck. So I'm sitting here thinking to myself, this could be raccoons. This could be, it could be something else. There's a number of things that this could be. I knew it wasn't Jeff because I could see him. And I knew it wasn't Micah because I'd heard him getting out of his tent with the zipper. And we're literally like, I don't know, we were at least 10 miles off the Blacktop Road back in the National Forest. If anybody would have been coming down there, we would have heard them. We'd have seen the lights. There's just no way. I mean, there's just no way. And now we did find out the next day that there was some turkey hunters that were camped about a mile and 3/4 away from where we were at. But still, to walk through there at night with no flashlights or no nothing, I mean you're not going to do that. Well, anyway, we hear the lid close, and in the whole time this is going on, it's like there's this one individual that's searching the camp, and there's one individual that's just outside of camp to the north making the popping noises about once every 5 minutes to 10 minutes. And the popping noises slowly start getting a little softer, you know. But anyway, so this thing keeps walking around. And then this literally goes on. This first started about 1 o'clock in the morning. The whole thing started. And about 4:45, it ended. And it ended with a way off. Okay, so the mouth popping individual, he's to the north, but even further to the north, I hear this very loud, deep blah sound. and it's definitely got a B as in Bravo in there, and a W as like in whiskey. It's Boa, and it's very deep, and it carried, and probably the best Bigfoot vocalization I've ever heard. But anyway, at that point, the two individuals that were in camp, they left. I could hear them walking away. I get, and looking back on it now, I think that was either mama or daddy, and those were two juveniles. And I think they were being told, "Hey, the sun's fixing to come up," because it was like 4:45, and it was going to get light pretty early. And I think they were basically being told it's time to quit playing games with these humans, and it's time to come home. And we got up the next day, and I looked all over for tracks, found nothing. I did find the stick that it stepped on, scared the crap out of me. And but there was no prints, because that area is so rocky, and if it's not rocky, it's completely covered in pine needles and stuff. And so there wasn't any tracks. And I looked very, very thoroughly. Probably spent an hour and a half circling the campsite and everything. But the weird part is, get up the next. So sun comes up. I'm absolutely exhausted. So is Jeff, because Jeff was up, and we basically kind of slept in a little bit till about 7. And I got up and I did the same thing I always do. I started making coffee, and I'm sitting there in my chair. I stoked the fire, and the coffee's going, and Jeff gets out of his hammock, and we start talking about it. And we're just sitting there, and I was like, you heard it after because he was asleep up until the point where I started screaming, right? And so he didn't hear any of that. But after that, he heard everything, And so we were talking about what we was hearing, and hearing about it. And I just kind of casually said, "Yeah." I said, "Did you hear it get in the cooler?" And he's like, "Oh yeah." And I was like, "Oh yeah, let's go see if they took something." Well, we went over to where we thought the cooler was. It wasn't there. The cooler was in the back of Micah's pickup truck. Micah had taken the cooler and set it in the back of his truck. And it was in the middle. It wasn't on the edge. So whatever it was had to reach up and over the bed of the truck and open that lid, and then it closed it. Now that cooler didn't have anything in it but drinks and single pieces of cheese and I think some hot dogs, and it didn't take any of them. We're positive that nothing was taken out of the cooler, but there was slices of cheese individually wrapped, hot dogs, and I think bottled water in that cooler. Everything else was in my cooler, which was locked. So, but anyway, that was pretty cool, because if it would have been a raccoon or hogs or anything else, it would have made all kinds of racket getting in the back of Micah's truck.
Yep.
But there was no sound like that. I would have heard it clawing its way up, and
it definitely would have taken at least the hot dogs.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't unless it's something truly different or something like that. I mean, they're not hungry, they survive very well. So unless it's just something that smells really good, I think they're usually going to leave it alone. And, but anyway, that's basically in a nutshell what happened. Now, I had never heard that mouth popping noise. Haven't heard it since. But a couple of years later, which wasn't really all that long ago, I was listening to a podcast, and it had Shelley Covington, Montana on it as the guest. She's a lady Bigfoot field researcher, and she was talking about that, and she mentioned the mouth pops, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, that's what I heard." So I started messaging her, and believe it or not, she just started chatting back with me, and so I told her that what I'd heard, and she said that she's heard it too, and that it's actually there's been a lot of people report it across the country. So that felt kind of cool because I'd never heard about it before until I heard her talking about it. But apparently, there's people up in Canada that are working on linguistics of these creatures, and
That's
she,
cool.
yeah, without me telling her the whole story, she said that they believe that the mouth popping sound is their language for "it's time to go" or "let's leave," which actually kind of makes sense. Like if there was a middle-aged juvenile and a younger juvenile, and the younger juvenile was being rebellious and just wanted to get in our stuff, and the other one was kept saying, "Come on, let's go. Come on, let's go,"
Right.
making mouth popping noise. It seems like I can kind of, in my mind, I can see that playing out like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it'd be easy to, because I mean, kids kind of do the same thing. You kind of got one looking out, the other one's causing mischief, and he's like, "No, come on, let's go. Let's hurry up." I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Mom's going to kill me if you get in trouble. Come on.
Yep.
Yeah, we've all been there. So, the thing that shocked me the most about it, and now granted, I'm filling in a lot of gaps on that, but the thing that shocked me the most is how human that behavior seemed. Now, it could just be that I'm interpreting it that way, but the unusual behavior, it was there, and the disgust when the creature stepped on the stick. Okay, so that was very human. That was very. Human.
I'm just impressed you got out of the hammock at all without killing yourself, because I would have been wrapped up like a burrito before it was over with.
Oh my gosh, it's a wonder I didn't hang myself or something. That was so crazy, but that was exciting. I got to admit, and as silly as this is going to sound, that's when I started sleeping in my car.
Oh,
yeah.
And I still struggle with it because, I used to I slept in hammocks for decades when I was camping, and I never used a tent, and but ever since then I've kind of had a little thing where I have trouble sleeping at night.
I understand. Enzo, he asked a question or a statement. He said he wonders if the popping was like echolocation, but you kind of explained that.
Well, I don't know. That's a good point. And that thought had never crossed my mind before. I don't know that would be necessary because I'm just an old deaf human, and I could hear the other individual walking around. I mean, that's the thing, is they weren't even really being that quiet. I mean, well, the one that was making the mouth popping noise, that was freaking loud. I mean, you can imagine being in a quiet forest at night and hearing, real loud pop.
Yeah.
I mean, it woke me up out of a dead sleep, and I just got done driving 6 hours in from Northwest Oklahoma. I was out, and but I don't know, maybe, but I mean, there was no need for echolocation because it was pretty obvious where both of them were at all times. So I don't know. That's just, and again, I'm just speculating. I don't have all the answers. So.
Well, that's kind of what we all do, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, and that's the fun of it.
Pretty much.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah, I love that story. I mean, that's when you told it a couple of years ago at the Paracon. I mean, I was like, that's awesome.
yeah. Very
My
exciting.
wife and I, we went down to Ho Chi Town. It's been 2-3 years ago. For our anniversary. And I was like, we had the podcast going, and I was like, I'm going to ask around, because that's their claim to fame is Bigfoot.
Yep.
And I love the area. It's beautiful. It's small. It's not overly busy. I mean, it's been a couple of years, but it was just relaxing. And I was like, I'm going to talk to people and see if maybe somebody's had an experience they want to share on the show or something like that. Well, we went into and I've told this on the show before, but I find it relevant to what you're talking about because it was a little diner. We went in for breakfast, and you could tell it was family owned. I mean, there was a guy selling the gun. He was out back, and you could hear him shooting it. That's just where we were at. And he brought it in. It's like, yeah, I'll take it. This or whatever. And it was like I said, it was April-ish. And early mid-April. And I asked the waitress, and I was gonna go take care of the bill, and I asked the lady at the counter. I said, does anybody, do you know of anybody maybe you could point me to? Because I told her I run a podcast, and we're interested in interviewing some people, that maybe have had a Bigfoot experience or whatever, because I'm figuring this is like their claim to fame because there's Bigfoot everywhere,
Right.
And she started laughing. Then she kind of repeated it. And everybody started laughing, kind of whatever, him hawing around or whatever. But I saw this older gentleman. You could just see a real somber look fall over his face. He didn't speak up. He just he acted like he wanted to kind of disappear in the crowd, if that makes sense. And I was like, man, that guy knows something. He's had an experience. That's just the vibe I got from him. He never come out and said it or anything, but that was the vibe. I'm like, he has seen something. He's been out in the woods. He's seen something. And, of course, the only person I ran into, and I ran into two people, actually. One of the person was at one of the wineries, and he was from out of state, and he said he saw one off the side of the road. And that was it. I mean, that's all he saw. But he wasn't hesitant to talk about it because he was out of state. It wasn't kind of one of those taboo things, people think I'm crazy or whatever.
He didn't care.
And no. And then one of the ladies that run one of the stores there said, yeah, you need to get a hold of this guy. I mean, he was the guy on Animal Planet or whatever. I can't remember his name to save my life now. But he'll be at the bar at this, whatever the popular bar was. It was like a Mexican joint, and you might know where I'm talking about, but some kind of Mexican restaurant that had a bar and all that. He said, they'll be there tonight, I mean, if you want to go talk to him or whatever. I'm like, well, that's not my scene. I don't want to go to the bar and do all that. I mean, I'd rather have a one-on-one. And that's kind of where it left it. But
right.
the number of people that seemed like they didn't want to talk about it, either laughed it off or whatever.
Well, it's kind of a hot topic, but it's better there than it is in a lot of places.
Yeah.
A couple of years ago, I quickly realized that there's, one of the major determining factors of how many Bigfoot reports you get out of an area, it has to do with two real things, other than, of course, the actual population, which we have no way of knowing of the Bigfoot, but it depends on the population of the area, and it also depends on the type of people that live in that area, and whether or not they're more or less likely to talk about these things. And there really isn't a term for it, but I decided I was going to give it a name. I call it a geographic/demographic phenomenon bias. And basically, for instance, if you go to Washington State, Northern Oregon, up in that area, it's not. It's like 70% of everybody over there believes or has seen a Bigfoot. If you don't believe in Bigfoot, you're the oddball up there.
Hmm.
Okay. Now you get down to southeastern Oklahoma, and there's a lot more people that are likely to talk about it than northwest Oklahoma, and you get up into Kansas, and I think Kansas may be the only state that's more conservative than Oklahoma. And it has to do with that particular type of people that are living in that particular area.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't think, we're not going to argue that Oklahoma and Kansas are probably two of the most conservative states in the union. Now, we've got political data that'll back that up. And conservative people do not talk about this kind of stuff.
Right.
Because they're very concerned about their reputation and all this other stuff, and they don't want it to affect their business or their job or this, that, and other. People that are a little bit more liberal, they'll talk to you. They'll just tell you straight up, well, I saw this or I saw that, this, that, and other. And so depending on the area you go to, you're going to have a higher or lower percentage of people that are willing to talk about it. So if you've got 10 people that saw Bigfoot in a certain area, maybe only one is going to talk about it. Or maybe in that particular area, if it's really liberal, maybe 5 will talk about it. It's that phenomenon bias that I was talking about.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense.
Down there, it's better. It's a hell of a lot better than it is up in Kansas.
Mm-hmm.
Or northwestern Oklahoma. I mean, we don't talk about it up here. I mean,
we ran into that. I know you and I have talked about that before in our area up in Caney. There are sightings, but no one wanted to talk about it. And it was just recently, we've been together as a group, 12 years now? And it's just been within the last probably 4 to 5 years that people are coming forward and actively sharing stories with us. And it's because of the area and it's because of the attitudes.
Yeah. It's amazing.
I was gonna ask, I mean, do you think with everything of the last 20 years, probably, I mean, just for the whole paranormal perspective thing, like with ghost hunters and stuff being more in the mainstream now this year, the last few years, the UFOs, UAPs being more in the mainstream, do you see people kind of lightening up a little bit and kind of willing to talk about it more with all this stigma? Kind of, to me, because it seems to me like this whole stigma is lifting.
I would agree with you. I would say that there's a higher percentage of people that are willing to go online and talk openly about these things in groups. But as far as like small town people speaking up and saying, yeah, I saw this when they're surrounded by their peers, I think that stigma is still very strong. But I think those same people will get online and chat with groups, and talk in that particular forum with a little bit more openness. So I think that's happening. Now, I can't speak for the UFO groups or the paranormal groups, but it seems like in the cryptid group, yeah, that's happening, but it's not happening on a what I would call a local level. It's really happening on an internet level,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they can hide behind anonymity on a computer screen, so that makes sense.
Right.
We see that even paranormally. In fact, I don't know when Facebook started doing it, but they've got to where chat's set up and you're in a group. If you're in a group, it'll through Messenger bring up chats and stuff that you get pulled into. And there's one that this one person was commenting on, and I'm like, man, that name looks familiar. And so I just clicked on their profile, and it was someone that I knew that has never come to anything paranormal that we've done in Caney in years. And I was shocked, but in a good way, it's nice to know, even if they don't want to share locally, that they're still willing to get out there and talk about it.
Yep.
Mhm. Yeah.
Enzo, he said, with all the press about UFOs, that seems to have made the other areas a little more acceptable. He said,
Mhm.
good point on small towns, though. Yeah. I mean, you still have that small town USA, which, Oklahoma and Kansas are littered with small towns. So, I mean, it makes sense. I mean, the older generations, I mean, it's stuff you don't talk about, and whether it be more religion influenced, maybe, because people don't want their, the church crowds, thinking, well, they're possessed or whatever, something along that lines. I kind
You
of,
brought this on yourself.
right,
Yeah, exactly.
You
Messing
need
with
to
you,
get
you're not supposed to be
right.
messing.
right. So
Mhm.
I don't know. I mean, Pam, I mean, you guys have said that the number of people that have come out that are older, like at
Mhm.
the Paracon, sharing stories and things like that, that's kind of impressive to me as well.
Yeah.
I agree. There's some people that I was pleasantly surprised to see come forward to talk about things that happened in the 50s, and they've
Mhm.
never told the stories before until now, and it's really fun to see.
Yeah.
The reports that I probably get, and I'm just kind of shooting off the hip here. I would say I get 2 older reports from back in the day for every fresh report
Yeah.
that I get. The older reports seem to trickle in more frequently, and a lot of it's just because people were too scared to talk about it. I mean, anybody that's over my age, over 50, they grew up in a time when nut houses were a real thing.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't know where you guys used to send your crazy people. We used to send them to Fort Supply. There was a nut house there, and I say nut house. I mean, nowadays, it's kind of like a low. It's
It's a
I
mental
don't even.
health care facility now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, good call. I didn't even know what to call it, but all you got to do is just around here. All you got to do is say, "Oh yeah, he had to go to Fort Supply," and everybody knows what you're talking about. And up
Kansas
in
was Osawatomie.
yeah, see, you guys had a place too.
Yep.
But nowadays, if you're crazy, I mean, hell, they don't lock you up. They just give you some kick-ass prescription drugs, and they send you on your way, and woo, everybody's happy. So it's a win-win.
We've talked about my story. It happened in 87, and I got laughed at a million times to the point where I didn't really talk about it for years because of it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I was even teasing you about it at the last Paracon. I was saying you tried to run it over or something. I'm really helping here. Yeah. It's true though. I mean, we catch hell about this kind of stuff, and uh, yeah, I'll be honest with you. It was just about a year and a half ago that the people at my work found out what I do with my free time, and they still give me a hard time. Even my boss, he picks on me every once in a while.
Hmm.
And but the cool thing is I'm getting this steady trickle of Bigfoot gifts that come my way because
That's awesome.
people go and see the Bigfoot sticker or whatever, and they feel compelled to buy it for me. I'm like, you guys knock yourself out. You can buy me all the stuff you want.
That's cool.
Right. Yeah. Speaking of gifts, I mean, we picked this up. I don't know if you can see it or not. We picked that up down in Ho Chi Town, little figurine, I've got on my desk
Fun.
here. And
Yeah.
I love it down there. It's great. It's
Mhm.
beautiful down there. It's just fun. There's not a lot to do, but it's still fun. I had a blast.
Yeah. I love that
But
area.
talking about the whole people being open about it, I didn't realize today I was talking to a friend of mine at work about you coming on and kind of I butchered your story, that I could remember that you shared earlier, but I was like, man, it was such a fun story and interesting. And he's a big video game guy, right?
Mhm.
And he's like, I didn't know anything about cryptids until a certain game came out, that has a bunch of like West Virginian cryptids. You guys can put two and two together. You guys are, Mothman and all that stuff. And he said, that's the first time I'd ever heard about cryptids. And he's my age. I mean, we're just months apart.
Wow.
And he grew up in northwestern Arkansas,
Wow.
and he's like, I've never really heard of cryptids.
That's surprising.
That's
Mm.
crazy.
Especially in
hot
Ozarks.
too.
Enzo nailed it. So I said Fallout 76.
That's awesome.
But yeah, I mean, I was just like, man, how do you not? I mean, I guess, but I guess, everybody's got their thing, what they're interested in. And mine, I know, stems from my childhood experiences, which opened up everything to me, which, it just really opened my mind. I mean, I've never had a cryptid experience. I mean, I've seen UFOs, I've experienced ghosts and all that, but I've never had a cryptid experience that I know of.
Mm-hmm.
Out where I live, and I mean, the ladies can attest. I mean, I live pretty much in the middle of nowhere, and
Now, wait a minute. You had that thing when you were little with the thing in the window.
oh, I did. You're right. Maybe you can shed some light on this. I totally spaced on that. So maybe I did.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me more.
I grew up. I don't know if you're familiar where Liberty is up here. Okay, a little small town. We lived at in this old farmhouse, and all the old farmhouses had a 2-foot foundation, right? And I was taking a bath. I was 6-ish, 5, 6, and I was sitting in the bathtub, being a kid. Yep, Enzo, she did. She called me out. But I was sitting in the bathtub, and right next to the bathtub, right, because you're looking at another, 1.5 2 foot off the floor. It was just above the bathroom or the bathtub rim, and this window was right there. It was a screen window. We didn't have air conditioner, all that, but I'm in the bathtub. It's dark outside. I look out the window, and right across the screen was a fox-like, face, and it had this like real sharp toothed grin. It was just like a mischievous grin, if I could explain it. And it just sat there staring at me. and I'm for years, I'm like, what was that thing? Because I went to a panic. I'm 6 years old. I'm seeing this thing looking at me. It wasn't aggressive, but the feeling I've got at 6, especially 6 years old, scared the crap out of me.
Mm-hmm.
My mom comes running in, and I look out the window, and it's gone. So it just, yeah. I'm glad you reminded me of that, Jess. Thank you.
You're welcome.
What year was that?
Oh Lord, 82, 83.
Okay. And did you live there as a teenager in that same house?
No. We only lived there for maybe a year. I remember I turned 6 there.
No. So it'd be kind of hard for you to estimate how high off the ground that window was and how high it was. Or how tall the creature was.
Well, I'm figuring, probably a good 2 foot crawl space.
Right.
And then probably another 2-3 foot,
No.
maybe even 4 foot off
So
of
it didn't have to be that tall to.
No.
I will. You used the word fox.
Mm-hmm.
Why? What separated this creature, made it a fox instead of a canine?
the pointed nose. That's what I remember. I remember the pointed nose and the mischief. I mean, it was a wide grin.
Mm-hmm.
And
What
and
color
that's
was it?
I don't remember, to be honest.
Hmm.
I mean, that's been 40 years ago. So
Right. Did it have pointy ears?
I want to say it did.
Yeah, it was probably some type of dog man. I'm just guessing,
Yeah.
Maybe it was a
Dog man.
juvenile if it was smaller. Surely they
Right.
have little ones too.
Yeah. Was it standing upright or was it down on all fours, you think?
As far as I know, it was standing upright. I
Okay.
mean, being that, but it was dark. Like I said, it was dark outside, and so it wasn't a lot of light being, and plus it was on that part of town. There's my brothers used to coon hunt that area a ton,
Right.
but they're 11 and 8 years older than I was at the time.
Right. Oh, Luke Garou.
The Lugaroo.
Got out my Sunday
You'll have
find.
to write your story down for Brian so he can map it.
Yeah.
Liberty is only like 15 minutes away from us.
Yeah, it's not, well, it's a little bit further than that. It's
Yeah.
between
20.
Independence and Coffeyville
Yeah, it's
on
straight north of,
69.
it's straight north of Coffeyville. I don't know what, 7-8 miles.
Yeah, something like that. It's not far though.
No.
Interesting. Yeah, that's very commonly reported behavior for both Sasquatch
Really?
and dogmen. Yeah, they're very
They
interesting.
watch a lot of people bathing.
Well, and
They try to
well,
freak little kids out more than likely.
They like watching kids. They like watching TV. You get a lot of reports of them apparently watching TV. Most people think they're watching them until you start asking them questions. And I'm like, well, what were you doing? Well, I was watching TV. Well, how do you know the creature wasn't watching TV? And they're like, oh, yeah. So I don't know. It seems to be super commonly reported, though.
Wow.
I would be willing to bet you, of all the behaviors that are reported that we can gather, roadside crossings are probably the number one most common reported thing where it's crossing, and the second most common is window peeking. They really report a lot of that, and I've actually got more window peeking dogman reports than I do Sasquatch
Really?
reports.
Really? That's interesting.
See, I'd not heard of those. Enzo, he said, who knew Dogman was a big Survivor fan? That's interesting.
Over that season 1, I'm telling you.
I think that's the last time I watched it too, was season 1.
Been a while.
But yeah, I find it fascinating. Ever since I first learned about Dogman, this has been several years ago. I found it on YouTube. I was looking up cryptids and things like that, because Bigfoot has never been, in all honesty, a huge draw for me. I've always accepted the fact, Bigfoot's real. I have no doubt in my mind about it. I've never experienced it. I've never really had anything to do with it. But when I heard about Dogman, it really piqued my interest, because I had never heard anything about Dogman. And it's just like all of a sudden, in the past, 8-10 years, it's really come on scene.
Right.
And I've looked into it, and it seems like it started off in Michigan and then just grew from there.
The name did come from the Michigan,
right.
And Linda Godfrey. She's the one, I think. She may be the one that coined the term, but if she wasn't the one that coined it, she was the one who spread it. And but yeah, I mean, I didn't either. I saw one in 2007, and I didn't even have a name for it. I didn't know what I'd even seen.
Wow.
And then fast forward many years later, it was like 2016. I was listening to some Bigfoot podcasts, and they kept making reference to this Dogman thing, and I was like, "When the hell are they talking about?" So I kind of started Googling it, and that's when I realized, it's like, "Holy crap, I've seen one of these things," And and that was when it kind of hit me, because at the time when I saw it, I just thought it was like a mutant dog or something that surely some local rancher would put a 30-06 round through pretty quickly, and that would be the end of that. And I never in a million years dreamed that there would be a breeding population of these things, so I was really flabbergasted, and that's when I really started getting into, all this stuff. I had always been in it, especially in the Bigfoot genre, since I don't know, I've always been fascinated by it, and I stumbled across a Bigfoot case file, I guess you would call it, when I was in 1996, and that was, Lord, I don't even want to think about how long ago that was, but I ended up kind of investigating it the best way I knew how at the time, and I just didn't know what I was doing. And what's even funnier is I found evidence, and I didn't even know I found evidence because I ended up finding tree structures. But in 1996, nobody knew what tree structures were,
Right.
at least not in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
And I
Cool.
thought a bunch of tweakers out in the woods,
Right.
And of course, that's what I blamed everything on for years. Tweakers. So, but they're really good scapegoats. You can blame them for everything. They
Oh,
don't
for
care.
sure. Enzo, he said at the Paracon he is fascinated with your classification of the 3 types of dogman reported. I think I got there about the time you were on. I was running late. I had a soccer game with my kiddos, and can you go into that?
Well, it's really not my classification, but it was given to me by my buddy Brandon, and I probably shouldn't mention his last name, but
It's fine.
he's a Native American. He's part Shawnee. I know he's part Seminole, and forgive me if I'm getting this wrong, Potawatomi. I think he's Potawatomi and Seminole. But he told me because his grandfather was a medicine man, and he's had issues with them before, and his family has had issues with Bigfoot, and his cousin had some issues with some dogmen, and so, but his grandfather apparently told him that there's these 3 types. There's the first type that's kind of like a overgrown wolf. It's a purely natural. They can die. They can, and all this stuff, and that's basically what I believe I saw. And they have, kind of raccoon type hands, and they get exceptionally large. They're not to be confused with a dire wolf. Dire wolves are not that big. They're just a little bit bigger than a regular wolf. A dire wolf would max out around 300 pounds. These creatures can go 550 and up. They're as big as a cow sometimes.
Wow.
And but he said that that's a very natural animal. There's a breeding population of them, and he said that there's another type that is more spiritual. And it's more like a paranormal type, and it's basically kind of like it's like a upright human with a dog's head, and it's got dog arms and dog legs, and it's very spiritual. It's primarily paranormal in nature, spiritual, and it can travel from realm to realm. And he said that the third type is basically what you might call a skinwalker, or
Right.
it's basically a medicine man that's using that dark medicine. Well, it's not really dark medicine. It's Native American medicine that's being used for dark purposes, and they shape shift. And even Brandon said he's not sure whether they actually physically shift or from man to an animal, or whether they have the ability to project out to other people an image that you take for being the truth. And so in your mind, you see this animal, but they're really the same person physically. But he said that when it's a medicine man doing this kind of stuff, there will almost always be one body part on the creature that'll be deformed. It'll be too large, too small, maybe just some kind of abnormal body part on it. Like maybe its head is too big, or one of its hind legs is kind of shriveled up or something. There'll always be something that's off about it.
That's
That's
interesting.
what he said.
It is.
And on all my reports that I've gotten so far, I haven't really found anything to counteract what he told me. And so I'm still running with that theory till I find a better one, I guess, or
Yeah.
evidence against it. So
Interesting.
Yeah. So I don't know
That
if
is
you.
interesting. So
Oh, go ahead, Jess. Sorry.
I was just going to say it's kind of interesting. In the paranormal field, we deal with doppelgangers a whole lot. And that theory kind of runs over to the doppelganger too. Whenever a doppelganger is encountered, there's always something wrong with the doppelganger. Even if it's like pretending to be another person, maybe the hair isn't just the right color, or the clothing isn't just quite right, or its eyes aren't just quite right. I wonder if there's something to that.
could you enlighten me what a doppelganger is?
Oh yeah. So doppelganger, I think isn't it like a Swedish term, Pam? I can't remember.
German, I think.
It's something originating German.
Mhm.
Basically what it is, a doppelganger is a imposter. Um, for instance, I got to experience one not too long ago. Pam and I and some other friends of ours went and investigated the McIntyre Villa in Atchison, Kansas. And we had another lady with our group that was investigating, and we had decided to go upstairs in the dark and sit and listen because we'd been hearing a lot of foot traffic above us when there shouldn't have been anyone up above. And a gentleman went up in front of me in the staircase, and I was in the middle, and this other lady was behind me, and she didn't have her flashlight with her. So I was shining it down on the ground for her, so it would kind of illuminate all the steps so we could all go up safely. And we hit the first turn on the staircase, the first landing, and we're heading up the second spot. And I thought, oh, I should move my flashlight back for her again so she can see that landing. And when I did, she was gone. And
Wow.
come to find out, she had never come up the stairs with us. She was in the dining room in a completely different section of the house.
Mhm.
So her doppelganger had walked with me up behind the stairs.
So what is a doppelganger's true form?
That's the question.
No one knows. Yeah. But
Doppelgangers have been seen
they
sometimes.
play out other people's lives. There's a
Mhm.
lot of stories.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
It's like a trickster almost that takes the form of you or someone, in your group, and lets you see them without them being there, makes you think that it's them, may have the same voice, the same face or something, but there's always just that one little bit of them that's not quite right.
well, okay. I've heard
Mhm.
people use the term before, but they
Mhm.
used it in a reference to someone looking just like you.
Mhm.
A couple years ago, the girls
Yeah.
at the office had a photo of some old guy, said it looked just like me, and they were all texting it to each other. They're like, "Don't it look like Brian?" And I was like, "No, I don't think it looks anything like me."
It's
But
been used in the past too. I know there's stories of like a mother waking up in the middle of the night and seeing their child that's on the other side of the world, and they find out later that maybe that child died at that particular moment, and came to them and was seen that way. So it's almost like a projection, but maybe not in some cases, and maybe they're just an umbrella term, things that are not all that specific are getting grouped under that. But yeah, in some cases it seems to be a projection from that person. And in other cases, it's like something is making a bad carbon copy,
Yeah. It's also
Not
used
that bad.
sometimes
Apparently it's
as a
rule used.
disguise.
Yeah.
It's sometimes used as a disguise, especially when it comes to like fae and fairy lore.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of legends of the fairies come and replacing your infant, taking your infant across and leaving one of their own in its place that looks just like it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of old, and that's a doppelganger thing too. It just kind of goes in all different directions.
Yes.
Old world lore.
Mm-hmm. Big time. Been around forever.
Yeah. Yep. Good luck catching them.
Yeah, no kidding. It is a strange thing, but it does make you wonder. And I think that's really cool too. I'm jumping topics here again. But like, Phil, you've told us your story of the fox thing a few times, and I never even thought about it being a dog man before now. But it's just looking at it from a different perspective.
Yeah. And I
Could
think that's
be.
what's cool about it is everybody from these different areas. And I know that's the purpose behind the Paracon is kind of bringing everybody together to kind of share notes and look at the similarities and some of the differences and say, hey, maybe this is the same thing or what have you. So I've some of the stories and stuff that I've listened to and stuff on Dogman. I mean, I know a lot of it's probably just for entertainment, but it sounds like there's a lot of aggression and all that. And that's that seems to be, but your story is totally different. I'm trying to think, our dogmen. I mean, when I think about them, I think they've been around as long as Bigfoot. They're like old world, like you guys said, legends and things like that. And then maybe they're resurfacing. People are paying more attention to it.
Well, they're first of all, you mentioned the fiction aspect of it, and yes, there is fiction sells, and we've got a whole bunch of people, content creators right now, that are running around and they're selling these stories, and we've got ghost writers where now AI is coming on the scene.
Yeah.
And I just like to take this time to warn everybody against putting fiction in your head, because if you are serious about educating yourself on these matters, you have to try your best to avoid fiction, because 2 years down the road, you won't remember which stories were fiction and which were real.
Yep.
Okay. So I do everything I can to not even look at fiction and to try to filter it out. Now I'm gonna step off my soapbox and I'll move on to the next question, which you were talking about.
They're being old world
Oh,
legends that people are paying more attention
to
to.
be honest with you, the documentation of what was known in the old world is the cynocephaly. It goes back. We've got more documentation going further back of canine type creatures than we do Sasquatch, and in a lot more abundance than the Sasquatch, from what I've seen. Alexander the Great captured 2 of them and swore them into his service. Now, granted, that didn't last very long because he died a premature death. But there was other accounts. Marco Polo encountered an island with the cynocephaly on it, and there's I'm trying to think of the Greek philosopher that was actually wrote it. What, can't remember who it was, but he was an early one, and he talked about a whole race of cynocephaly people that lived up in the mountains in India, and he was saying like their population was like 200,000 at the time.
Wow.
And
Wow.
yeah, I mean they were. I mean, if what they're saying, if there's any grain of truth, they were all over the world, and they were everywhere and in fairly decent numbers. There's also a documented series of letters written between I could dig this information up, but a Catholic priest and that was down in Africa, and a Catholic somebody in Rome at the Vatican, and they were writing letters back and forth back in the 1600s, and they were basically debating over whether or not the cynocephaly had souls and could receive the gift of salvation from Jesus Christ.
Hmm.
And it's not like it was the just drop back then. You didn't just drop it in the mailbox. Sending a letter was an expensive ordeal.
Right.
These people were dropping some serious coin to argue about this. And then, of course, there's the St. Christopher story, where a lot of people believe that St. Christopher was a dog man. And because in the early tapestries, he's depicted as having a canine head. So
That's
it's a very deep rabbit hole. And I just touched on what's out there. Okay. So, yes, there is a whole lot of long historical documented, and you say that it kind of stepped out of the limelight, but I don't know that it ever did, because werewolves have always been with us.
Right.
And we've always just kind of rubber stamped the werewolf, the beast of Gévaudan over in France. It was supposedly some kind of large canine beast. In all the reports, there was no reports of it transforming. It was just a beast, and it was roaming the countryside, and it killed over 100 people. And it went on for years. If you really sit down and you dig, you'll find a lot. Just like if you dig into the Bigfoot phenomenon, you'll find a lot. So,
That was going to be my next question. Is do you think that's where the werewolf came from? Was that legend? I understand a lot the lycanthropy, or if I'm even pronouncing it right, but I understand people having mental issues, acting like dogs, and being aggressive and all that, but the actual physical werewolf, that's kind of where I was. But you've kind of already answered that.
Well, I think that's kind of for the most part. There's only been like 3 modern day documented accounts of people having this lycanthropy, where they believe falsely that they are a werewolf or some kind of canine. There's only been 3 documented reports that I've run across, and there's tons and tons of dogman reports all across the country. So if you ask me, that's a drop in a bucket in a sea of water. It's just it's a very frail attempt at explaining it. There's a greater phenomenon at hand, and there's more going on. Now, there are reports of people that transform from human into wolf and back. Now, those reports are much rarer than just regular old dogman reports, but it would explain a lot. And I'm starting to consider the fact that there may be, and I'm really going to get crazy here, so put your woo hat on. I am starting to become more and more open to the idea that there may be pockets of family groups of these lichen type creatures that can transform, and they live in small communities or out in rural areas, and they just kind of stick to themselves. Um, I've had some reports like that
wow.
have made me scratch my head, and I don't know what I don't. I just don't know. But I'm open. Becoming open to the idea that this could be a phenomenon, because it would explain, their interest with looking in windows. Maybe they're just peeking at their neighbors or something, or something like that. I mean, it would also explain a lot of the human behaviorisms that some of these creatures tend to exhibit. And I, I I don't know. The more and more I dwell on that, the the more I lean towards the idea. Now, the big problem with that, of course, is there is no evidence whatsoever for that. And I always tell everybody I try my best to be an evidence-based field investigator. And so I guess if that's what I'm going to say, I've got to stick with that. I don't have any evidence for that. But eventually you start kind of wondering if some of the stories are true.
On one hand, you would think it would be really hard, especially in this day and age, to hide something like that, in a world where you have to have a birth certificate, you have to have a social security number and these things to live. And I would have always thought that. However, just this past week, and it's kind of ironic that this came up when it did, um, there I love TikTok. I'm on there a lot. And there's a creator that I follow, and she lives in Alaska. And I want to say they're an offshoot of Amish, but they left Pennsylvania and they moved to Alaska, and they live in the outback basically. But she was just talking the other day about the fact of, yeah, she has no birth certificate, she has no social security number, but she's purchased a vehicle, she's got a job, she does these things without it. So who's to say, and they are a smaller group of people, they have their own community and they have their own ways.
Yeah.
Maybe it
Well,
could be, who knows?
just because you're a family group of lichens, it would not necessarily mean that you don't have a birth certificate or that you
True.
don't have.
It would be harder to hide a baby lichen, though,
Well, I mean, maybe it's like Teen Wolf where it doesn't hit till puberty or something.
There you go. It very well could be. Yeah. Who knows? It's an interesting thought, though.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it would make sense. Maybe they pay taxes and
Mhm.
own land, and one of the stories that I heard was that there's a family of these lycanthropes out by Hitchcock, Oklahoma, and there's supposedly another family of them that live out by Mangum, Oklahoma,
Huh.
and they just, they own land. Their kids go to school, but they have the ability to transform, and they've been known to disappear people. And then when you take that and you top it off with the the gravestone in Kanawha, um, of
Yeah.
Catherine Cross,
Hmm.
um, a lot of people like to speculate about what her epitaph means.
Hmm.
I mean,
Fascinating story.
yeah, I guess I'm just insane. I think her epitaph means exactly what it says.
Hmm. Why would they word it that way otherwise? And in case someone doesn't know, her epitaph says "murdered by human wolves." Isn't that correct? Is that what it
Yeah,
is? Yeah.
exactly verbatim. And there were actually other um, tombstones in a couple of the surrounding towns in that area that said the same thing, but they were older.
Oh, really?
They have
Wow.
since, all of these tombstones have come up missing
Mhm.
since 2016. They've been gone. But prior to that, you could go and you could view them.
Mhm.
But I don't think that that's a coincidence. Um,
There's actually, if I remember correct, there is pictures of hers at least
yeah,
on the internet.
I've got them on my. I did a YouTube video on that,
Yeah.
and there's plenty of pictures online available. So, yeah.
Pretty wild.
So
I know
probably the best
someone had,
one, if you want to see one, Jack Carey did a really good video, and his even goes more into detail about it than mine did. So I just didn't want to plagiarize all his material. So
Right.
someone had written a book, and it was fiction. And I think it was called "Murdered by Human Wolves," if I remember correctly.
yeah,
And
I've got it in there.
it was, I wasn't impressed with it at all. I thought, I was so excited to get a copy of it and read it. And yeah, it was pretty.
It's 100% fiction.
Oh, yeah,
And
absolutely.
it even says so in the beginning.
Yeah.
And everybody has taken that and ran with it.
Mhm.
Because it's so convenient to just, but that doctor, he was that supposedly did the botched abortion on her or whatever. He was not convicted. He was released. He was
Mhm.
exonerated from the crime,
Yeah.
and her family ended up moving out of state less than a year later. So it was almost like after they buried their child, they got their affairs in order and they got out of there.
Mhm.
Why would you want to get out of there so badly?
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah, I've never heard about that. That's kind of crazy.
Mhm.
Well, you can check out my video. Don't forget to like and
Will do.
subscribe.
Right.
Will do. Absolutely.
Red Dirt Cryptid Investigations. Absolutely. It's got
Yep.
some good stuff
Yeah.
on there.
You should talk about your book a little bit. Brian
yeah.
gives courses, and he's released a book. I have my copy here.
Sweet.
Oh, that's a first gen right there. Yeah.
Yeah, and
mine's on
they're
on the-
jealous because mine is signed.
I know.
Sweet.
She rubs it in my face all the time.
That's right.
Oh man, there's no telling. I probably wrote something in there about poop in a box or something, didn't I?
No,
third of a
luckily
turd.
you didn't. You said thank you for all the support and the leads.
There you go. Yes, and you
Nothing
did.
about the poop box.
I got a lot of my case files up in your area from you ladies. You did real good.
My favorite's the third of a turd.
Now, Brian, I mean, I'm
of a
aware of
turd.
what they're talking about, but for those listening, I'm pretty sure they're on their edge of their seat now, wondering what's going on.
Yeah,
here.
we should actually, this is a good opportunity. We have told our side so many times. It would be very nice to hear Brian's side of the ordeal.
So here I am, minding my own business. Ain't done nothing to nobody, right? And here comes Jessica with this guy. And for what it's worth, this guy was very sincere. And I may be completely off about this. This guy's got something he wants to show you, she says. And I'm like, oh, what's in the box, And I'm thinking, he's got some kind of, evidence or something, And so he's like, okay, well, I want to talk to you, but we need to go talk where it's private. I'm like, oh, this is really something, So we go back by the bathrooms, and there's a table there, and we sit down there and we start talking. And the first thing that the guy did that kind of wigged me out is he took my notebook and he kind of took it away from me, and he wrote his phone number and everything down in my notebook. And I thought that was odd, but whatever. And because I wouldn't just grab your notebook and start
Right.
writing. You know? Well, anyway, then so he starts. I'm like, well, what's in the box? And he's like, no, I got to tell you the story. And I'm like, okay. So he tells me that he's, and I may get this wrong, a little bit, but he was very sincere, and he was very serious, and he says that he was in like New Mexico, and he said that there was like this. It looked like there was a cave up on the side of this cliff face, and so he basically climbed up this 75-foot some odd. It made it sound like it was a really big cliff face, and he climbs up this cliff face, and he gets up on the edge of this cliff, and there's like a little overhang, but it's not a cave, and there's this giant bird's nest there, and so he's looking at the giant bird's nest, and then he said about 7 or 8 feet from this giant bird's nest, he finds this giant turd. And I was like, really? And he's like, yeah. He's like, it was like this long, and it was like this big around. And I'm like, okay. And I'm like, and he's like, and it's a Bigfoot turd. And I'm like, well, you sure it's not like a turd from the bird?
Bird turd.
And he's like, no, it's got to be. It's got to be a Bigfoot. And he actually kind of got a little irritated that I suggested it could be something other than, a Bigfoot turd. But he couldn't quite explain to me why a Bigfoot would have been up there using the restroom on the side of this cliff. But anyway, I may be remembering this wrong. But so then he goes and he opens this thing up, and he's got this thing, and apparently he put it in this little box, and this thing had molded to the box, so it was a square, and it looked like a brick, and it was all wrapped in plastic. And the first thing that crossed my mind is, was it still gooey when he put it in this box? And it kind of solidified, or something. So I'm just kind of scratching my head. And, man, he told me that it was this long, but he's got this turd that's about the size of a brick. One of those little red bricks, And I was like, well, I thought you said it was like this long. He goes, well, I cut it into 3 pieces. And I'm like, well, what'd you do that for? He goes, well, I had to separate them. And I'm like, well, why'd you do that? He goes, well, I took the other 2 pieces and I hid them. And I'm like, well, why? He said, so the government doesn't get them. And I was like, oh, yeah. Okay. And that's when he kind of lost me, when he thought that the government, because I have no doubt that the government is involved in these things, but to the point that people, let me put it to you this way: I got 360 some odd case files right now. Not a single one of them involve Men in Black or government conspiracy. Okay, you just kind of got to go where the evidence points you. Well, but he was very serious. He was concerned, and so I kind of looked at it a little bit. It looked like fecal matter, to be honest with you, but I wasn't really sure because it was really old, and it was really weird. But the guy was very serious. He was very sincere, and he believed it. I don't know. I may have misjudged the situation, but to be honest with you, I walked away thinking, maybe this guy's crazy. 'Cause I deal with a lot of crazy people. You
Mhm.
know, I get a lot of really weird phone calls. You know, just the other day, I was talking to a guy from your area, by the way. It might be one of your relatives. I don't know, but
Probably.
he was from over. I swear the guy was just messing with me, but he was from over by the state line, over by Sedan, and he was telling me that the lost city of Atlantis was on his property, and that him and Bigfoot were protecting a spring, and and that, you know, they were fighting big industrial complex to keep the spring clean and all this other stuff, and he was wanting me to come out there to his farm, and then he was talking about he was going to introduce me to the Bigfoot family, and if we dance just right for Mama Bigfoot, she'll give us her blessing and stuff. And I'm just like, dude, you lost me at Atlantis, man. You know, I have a hard time believing all this stuff. And the last thing I'm going to do is go out to this guy's place alone, you know,
Hmm.
Right.
you know, and anyway, I get a lot of interesting ones. And, you know, I about imagine if you take like 10 of the people that I would think are unhinged slightly, you know, God bless them. Um, there's going to be a couple of them that they really do have activity on their property,
Hmm.
you know, and I'm probably going to miss out on a few of them. But at the end of the day, as a field investigator, you have to be concerned about your safety.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
I'm not going to tell my wife that I'm going out to meet the guy that's got Atlantis on his property.
She would kill you.
Yeah. And
I
she tracks me on the Life 360 thing, and she does. She worries about me going out and meeting up with these people, because as far as she's concerned, they are all crazy. And of course, she thinks I'm a little crazy too. But yeah, you'd be surprised how many phone calls I get. So, you know,
we're not surprised at all. We run across a lot of that too. I will say though, in nearly every case, there's usually it's kind of like the, you know, there's always a kernel of truth in the
yeah,
craziest story.
Mhm.
Uh a lot of these people, like we have a gentleman that lives near our area who thinks that the aliens are tracking him daily.
Mhm.
And it
Yeah,
all stems from him having a UFO encounter many years ago.
yeah,
Um, but it caught his attention so much, he started paying too much attention. And then he started really reading into things that weren't there. And before he knew it, and this is my own thing, I always say people John Keel themselves,
Yes.
because John Keel, Mothman, and all of that, he really went,
yeah.
yeah,
He
woo,
did.
he got in too deep and really, I think, drove himself a little bit insane
He
at the
did.
end there,
they get
before he
all hyper
passed.
focused on that.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Is
this gentleman I'm talking about, I mean, he thinks that any cloud in the sky is a UFO that's cloaked and it's following him. So we always tell people, you know, like, yes, it's good to believe, and if you're interested, please look into it, but don't dive in so deep that it becomes your entire existence, because then you're gonna,
Yeah.
it's a bad
It becomes
idea.
an obsession, and but you know,
Yeah.
this brings up a valid point. You know, I mean, we kind of joke around a little tongue in cheek about some of these people, but here's the thing: maybe it's the event that kind of pushes them to the edge. Maybe they were fairly normal
Mhm.
until they were just minding their own business, and they walked around this tree in the woods, and they saw this thing, and it messed their head up so bad, you know, that there was an impact to their
Mhm.
psyche.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And so, how many of these people are a little off because of what they've seen, And how many of those people were off and they saw this thing because of they have a mental condition? These are
Exactly. Yeah.
we don't know. So I've found that a large portion of people that report Bigfoot encounters are a little off.
Mhm.
No, they're just a little off. And I think it's because of there is seeing this thing. It uproots your whole world, your
Mhm.
base, your foundation, and it jacks you up a little bit. Um, I feel I get it. I was fortunate enough when I saw that dog man that I was able to put this rubber stamp on it, and that it was just a mutant dog that was had a disease, gigantism. That was how I justified it in my mind. If I'd have been forced, if I'd have seen that thing stand up and walk on its hind legs, I don't know that I would be the same individual that sits before you today.
Mhm.
Yeah. Enzo said that's one of the main tenets against UFO disclosure. Some people won't be able to handle it.
Yeah, I
And
agree.
I agree with that.
Well, and it's
Um,
like Bigfoot disclosure, and I honestly don't. I'm not a big proponent for it. I catch some heat about it because everybody thinks they're entitled to the truth, but the truth is that a person is smart, but people are stupid.
Yes.
absolutely.
Dangerous.
Yeah, and that's what we do as as a race, and is we discover new species and then we exterminate them.
Mhm.
Yeah.
If it's any kind of threat at all, we're going to kill it. That's our answer for everything. We're going to hang its head on the wall, and that's it's I don't. That's not the answer. I think that the Bigfoot people and even the dog men, I think they're better off without our help.
Mhm.
So, but that's just my 2 cents worth.
Well, I would agree. I mean, I love to hunt, but if they were to disclose it, say, hey, yeah, these, Sasquatch are real.
Yeah.
How many people are going to pick up guns and go out and say, I'm going to get one of those?
Mhm.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that.
Well, and what would end up happening is Billy Bob would go into the woods and he would shoot one, and then he'd try to cut its head off and bring it back. He would get killed by its family, and then the county sheriff would get involved. Then the military would get involved, and then we
Right.
would declare war on the Sasquatch people and probably exterminate them, all because Billy Bob started it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And at least that's how I see the whole thing playing out. Because the one thing we have always, our species is really prolific breeders, and we have mastered pack hunting, and that we can muster more numbers than anything else.
Yeah.
So I don't think the Sasquatch would have a chance if we really knew that they were there and we gathered our numbers and we rallied against them. I don't think they'd have a chance.
Mm. Yeah.
If we did it in force, like the old days. So bare minimum, they'd have to relocate.
Yeah.
So anyway, there's my crazy tirade for the night.
That's good. Well, I think that's a good stepping off point or leaving off point. Brian, man, I've enjoyed the conversation, and I would love to invite you back anytime you're willing to come on or you want to come on. Reach out to us by all means. For those of you
Absolutely.
that are listening that want to look more into what Brian is doing and his crew are doing, how many people are on your team?
Well, it kind of depends. We kind of float, but we've roughly got about 7 guys that are on my team currently. Um, we're not taking any new members. I've already starting to experience growing pains because it's almost impossible to try to plan anything and get 7 people involved. And
Right.
if somebody can't make it, then they get their feelings hurt. And I'm already starting to figure out that smaller is better. And
Yes.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
so
That's why we stay small.
yeah, and it's not that I don't want to exclude anybody, but I'm starting to realize that what needs to happen is, you need to help other people form their own groups and work with them to make them better, not bring them into your group. But that's another thing. But yeah, we have about 7 people that go, and if we can get 3 or 4 people on a camp out, we're doing good.
Well,
So
that is good. It is hard to do.
yeah.
Yeah,
Do
it
you
makes sense.
do you
Go
have
ahead,
any
Jess.
courses coming up? I was going to ask. Brian gives classes occasionally. Does he have any coming up?
No, I just did one in Moore, Oklahoma, about a month ago, and it's just kind of hard to find a place because um, I'm not. Uh, I'm not going to spend a whole bunch of money renting out a building or a facility. And, I've looked into the library aspect because a lot of libraries have that kind of stuff. But most of them want you to have a library card. And so, unless a certain individual that has a library card from that area wants to host something like that, I'm not going to rent out a place because it usually ends up with just being a money losing thing for me. Almost every single one. The only one that I ever actually made any money on was the one in Tallahena, and and we were charging for that one, and I kind of felt bad. So, long story short, I don't know how many more I'm going to do. If people are interested in it, reach out to me and we'll talk. I don't mind doing it. It's just not something that I can afford to do once a month because I always end up out gas, and depending on how far away it is, I'm usually out a motel room, and so it's a pretty it's there's a cost, even though you can get a room for free most times. Um, but I enjoy doing it. It's just not something, and it also interferes with my field work, which is my passion. But I don't mind doing it. But you can get the book on Amazon, and yeah, I mean, if in everything there's more in the book than I talk about in a 6.5 hour class. So there
Enzo
you go.
brings up a great point. You do know someone that works at a library, and we would love to have you up this way. If you're ever inclined to come teach a class, we will be happy to host it.
Yeah. Well, I would not mind at all, but you
Yay.
got to realize the book says Oklahoma on it.
Oh, yeah.
We're on the line.
We're so
Candy's like,
close.
here.
Yeah.
There's a reason why we're called Border Town Paranormal.
Yeah.
Yep.
Do you think anybody will notice? I don't know. I don't want to get ran out of town.
Oh, no.
Yeah, we'll have to
Definitely
talk
not.
about that because you guys do have a pretty good place, pretty good
We
little,
do.
yeah.
Mhm.
So and a really good Mexican restaurant.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
I like that place.
That's
So, but
fun.
yeah,
Yeah. So Brian,
We'll have to
where can
set that up.
people where can people find you? Or I mean, you mentioned YouTube. You have a website, anything like that you would
well,
be willing to share?
I have a website, but it's not there's I don't know. You can find the link to my website on our Facebook page. Just go to Red Dirt Cryptid Investigations on Facebook. You'll find a link there to our YouTube channel. Our YouTube channel is probably our biggest endeavor. We're also on TikTok. We're on LinkedIn. And as of this week, we are now on Rumble because,
Nice.
I did see that.
yeah, oh, you did? Wow.
I did. I like Rumble.
I'm having issues with YouTube. So
I understand.
it's, A lot of my you can't. It'll tell you that I've got 133 videos, and you can't see but maybe, I don't know, 2/3 of them.
Right.
Oh man.
I mean, how am I supposed to be successful? And it's not like I have copyright strikes or people are reporting me or anything. It's just you can't see these videos. So I don't know what's going on, but I'm not going to remove myself from YouTube, but I am at this point I'm desperately trying to get all my material off of YouTube and backed up on a nice external hard drive, and I'm looking at other platforms. So
Yeah, we're on Rumble as well. It's a little bit different platform. Kind of takes some getting used to, but I've got it. The way I've got it set up is once we're finished, it'll transfer everything over to Rumble. From here it's like $10 a month, something like that. So when we're done with our live show, on YouTube, it'll automatically transfer to Rumble. So it kind of helps
I've
that way.
noticed that they have connectivity there, and I didn't understand the business arrangement that those two had, seeing as how they're competing against each other.
Right.
It's odd. So, but you never know. Maybe YouTube bought them out, and maybe they own them.
Not that I know of. I follow Dan Bongino. I don't know if you're familiar with him or not. He's kind of a political commentator, but he's part owner in that, and he's like absolutely against it.
Well, there's a lot to be said for having a platform where they can't just come in and shut your stuff off for whatever reasons. And I still, to this day, I've been looking. I just noticed this like 4 weeks ago that I'm having all these issues, and for the life of me, I don't know why it's happening, and I can't even download these videos. I can watch these videos, but I can't even download these videos that they've decided don't need to be public. I can't even download them to my hard drive.
That's strange.
That's crazy.
So I'm in jeopardy of losing that material.
That's crazy because Mark and I, we touch on What If Tomorrow. We touch on a lot of really sensitive to Google topics. We kind of get political sometimes, and we share our opinions, and we've gotten like one strike, but none of our other stuff's being hit. I don't get that.
Yeah, I've never gotten in trouble ever on YouTube, and somehow a third of my material is unavailable. I mean,
crazy.
I can see it when I go into manage my videos. I can see my material, but you can't go to my page and see those videos.
Wow, that's
They're
crazy.
just gone. And these are popular videos. I have no idea what's going on. I'm currently researching it. So
maybe you're too close to the truth. I don't know.
I don't know about that. I don't know. I haven't even said any trigger words, so gotta stay away from those trigger words.
I understand that too.
So before we go, we touched briefly on the fact that Brian has been mapping different cryptid stories from the lower Kansas, upper Oklahoma area.
Right.
If someone from our area has a story they would like to give you, how can they get that to you?
Well, step one would be hit me up on Facebook Messenger and just say, hey, my name's so and I have a report for you. And we'll make it happen then. I'll probably, I'm in the process of trying to get a platform to where I can send you a link, or there'll be a link on my Facebook page or something, and or maybe even a QR code where you just scan it with your phone and it pulls up a form, and it ends up being like a Survey Monkey thing. But we're not there yet. But in the meantime, you just get to have a phone call with me, and I'll fill out the paperwork. You don't even have to write anything. So, and then, after we get done getting all the basic information, you can get somewhere between 5 to 30 minutes of my witty banter. So as a bonus.
Awesome.
Well, I think that sounds far superior than just filling out a form.
Absolutely.
Get the personal touch.
Yeah,
Yes.
I beat the hell out of Survey Monkey, and I'm better.
Now, if anybody, perhaps they don't have a story, but they're very interested in seeing your map, how do they go and view the map?
Okay, right now, my central hub is my Facebook page. If you go to my Facebook page and you scroll down, every Facebook page has what's called a featured section. It'll say featured right there, and you can scroll sideways through there and different things will pop up. Okay. If you go to my featured section, the first thing you're going to see is a link to my YouTube channel. If you scroll a little bit to the right, you're going to see a link to where you can take you to buy my book. If you scroll again, you're going to see a thing called Airtable, and that is a link to all of my case files through a program called Airtable. It's very similar to Excel for those computer nerds out there, but you depending on how you access that program, depending on how you open it, whether you open it in Chrome or Safari or what, it may require you to set up an account with Airtable, which it doesn't cost you anything. It's just like setting up an account with anything else. Some people can just click on it and it goes right to. I haven't deciphered that mystery yet, but at bare minimum, you'll have to give them your email address and sign in. And then once you do that, you will have access to every case file that I have. And you can read it, you can hit print, you can do whatever you want to with it. They don't belong to me, they belong to the people. And so that's there. And if you scroll over again, there's a link, it'll take you to my website. Now, keep in mind, my website has not been updated in a long time, so it doesn't have my new logo or anything like that. But if you go there, one of the best parts about that is there's an interactive map there. And if you scroll down the bottom, it says map, and it'll redirect you to a link, and it'll take you to my Google Sites map of cryptid activity. And you can go through and pull it up, and you can click on all these different waypoints, and there'll be like 4 different categories. There's of course there's a Sasquatch foot for Bigfoot reports. There's a wolf's head for a dogman report. There are flying cryptids. There's a mothman looking creature, and there's a couple of other icons depending on what kind of creature or phenomenon was involved. But if you click on it, it'll give you a brief description of what happened at that location and when, and it'll give you the case file. So if you want to read the whole case file, you can just go back to Airtable and you can read the entire case file. And you can use that to search your particular area very quickly to see what's going on. Now, there's a problem with it. It's like I said, there's only like 284 waypoints on that map. Apparently, Google doesn't think I need any more than that on waypoints. They're wrong, but Google's been wrong before. So, of course, my case files just keep growing, but there's still a lot of dang reports in there, and it makes it real easy to get on there and just kind of click and shoot and find all these. But like I said, I've added over 100 case files since I ran out of waypoints, and we're still climbing. So it just keeps growing as everything tends to trickle in. So
That's awesome.
that's there.
Fantastic.
It's an incredible resource.
Yeah,
It
I'm
is.
looking for a new map that I can figure out how to do it that has more waypoints. The problem is I haven't found one that's free, and unfortunately, free is what my teacher's salary budget allows me to dabble with. I start spending too much money, my wife's gonna kick my ass. She's a very patient woman.
Yeah.
She only had
Anybody out there who's interested, go check out the maps. I've been on it several times. It's so interesting. Not only the different kinds of cases and the different types of cryptids that it mentions, but it's also super interesting just to see how things cluster.
Mhm.
You don't really think about it until you kind of see it right in front of your face and you really see how things cluster in particular areas. It's just super interesting. So everybody go take a look at it. And if you have a really interesting story or even just a short story where you just think you saw something very odd, let Brian know, and let him map your story. And eventually maybe somebody will come up with a free version of a mapping system where we can get them all on there. I know how he feels. Our paranormal group has been wanting to map so badly the ley lines and all the different types of paranormal activity from our area, but it's like Brian says, they don't think you need much more than 200, 250 before you're out. So
Mhm.
yeah.
and that wouldn't even start our map.
No.
I mean, it seemed like I got onto that and I just started going and going and going. And then all of a sudden it's just like, boom, you're done. And I'm like, I got so many more. So that's kind of disappointing, but just in the way it is and what it is, it's still super handy. And
Mhm.
I want to in the future, I want to find something that's affordable. I mean, I could even do probably $50 a year, but they're wanting like the ones that I've seen, they want like, well, they want like $10 a month, but at the same time, they want everyone to pay $10 a month just to view the stuff.
Yeah, not just the
Right.
person filling it
So,
out.
it's not something I can share. It's like they seem to think it's for personal use or something.
Mhm.
So I don't know. I'm
So,
sort of building something.
so if there's a programmer out there that is feeling generous this holiday season,
Yeah.
reach out. I mean, for sure.
For what it's worth, if we had an unlimited pool like that, there's no reason why we couldn't share a platform like that, and you could have your ghost icons and different stuff, and we could have
Mhm.
it would end up looking like that black map that I brought to the year before last. Remember that thing? Oh gosh. And one of these days, I'm going to hang that up in my office at work, and my boss is going to crap. But that thing is huge, and it's just, I mean, it's got everything on it from Native American burial mounds to UFO sightings, Bigfoot, dogmen, and all this other
Yeah.
different stuff. It was very busy. Very,
Yeah.
very busy.
That's what we're wanting to map. We have I've been tracking for the last 10 years, I think it's now, every version of every kind of paranormal you could think of, including where the Indian burial mounds are and haunted cemeteries and cryptids and Bigfoot and UFO sightings and light anomalies and magnetic anomalies and where these are according to the ley lines. And I would just love to be able to just map this all out so we can kind of see, because I know that there's things that are happening with each other, that things are happening because of other things. And I just can't, like you said, there's just no software available that
Yeah.
you're not going to have to give up a kidney for.
I just
Well,
texted my son and was like, "Hey, would any of your friends be interested? You know any programmers?"
you
We'll
know,
see if he gets back to us.
the amount of manual labor that would go into data input on something like that would
Mhm.
be massive. Um,
Hmm.
I mean, it would take a lot. The amount of labor that went into my little one was pretty substantial, and then
Oh,
on top
yeah.
of that, the case files alone, there's a lot of time and effort put into that kind of stuff. People don't realize it. In the beginning, I was typing all that stuff in. Now I've figured out that I can just open up Word and I can hit the microphone button and I can speak into it, and then I can correct all the grammatical errors, and then I can just copy and paste the whole case file into the report. And so I'm learning ways to cheat, and it's speeding things up. I can do a case file now faster than I could, 2 years ago or 3 years ago. But it still takes a lot of time.
Mm-hmm.
So
It does.
yeah, I understand why people don't have time. I
Yep.
mean, crazy.
Sure is fun,
All
though.
right. All right. Well, Brian, is there anything else you want to share with anybody listening?
Not off the top of my head. I think we've pretty much gossiped about just about everything.
Right.
I mean, we do have somebody that's not here tonight. Do we want to make fun of him at all? I mean, isn't that what happens when you don't show up?
Right.
I think it's our
Well,
solemn duty to, do something, say something, or something.
He's going to be in
like
charge of the next big get together. We're going to lay it all on him.
a vote might be in order.
Absolutely. He's
Added
president.
duties, yes.
Grand Poobah.
Exactly.
The illustrious potentate.
Ooh.
oh my gosh.
You
You
guys
get him
need
a hat with a little fez.
Yeah.
We'll get him a woo hat. We're going to make him wear
Right.
the woo hat next time.
We
For
could-
sure.
He will happily do that. He
I'm
loves
He would. He would.
putting crap on his head. So
I'm telling you, some rubber poo on top of a top hat. Ooh.
just so you know, Brian, I did not know what was in that box. I did not know.
It's okay. You're forgiven.
Seriously, I did not know. I actually didn't know what was in that box until like 2 weeks after the Paracon that year.
It was a while.
I believe. And it was the only reason why I found out was because Jeff Hetfield messaged me. Because so at the Paracon that year, towards the end of the day, he brought me his guitar and asked me to sign it. And I just assumed maybe he just had everybody at the Paracon sign it, or, when he made new friends. And I was like, sure, I'll sign your guitar. And like 2 weeks later, he messaged me and he was like, hey, this is Jeff Hetfield that you met at the Paracon. I was like, hey, Jeff, what's up? And he's like, do you know why I had you sign my guitar? And I was like, I actually don't, I'm not sure. And he was like, well, anybody who could make Brian open up a box of poo is a rock star in my book. And I was like, a box of poo? What are you talking about? And then he told me the story. I did not know that's what was in there.
That is so funny.
I will say this though, Brian. I walked by you and I did see you talking to the gentleman, and you treated him with the utmost respect. Absolutely, the whole time that I saw you there. So,
and he may have, stuff going on his property too and stuff.
Maybe, yeah.
Sometimes it's really hard to be 100% accurate and to judge character accurately. I've met a lot of people over the years that I'm not sure whether what they told me was a figment of imagination or not. But that was one of my more memorable ones. And that and the guy that has Atlantis on his property. And Jeff was always giving me a hard time about that one. And he thought that was pretty funny. But then he got hooked up with that guy from Atlantis too. And he ended up spending about an hour and a half talking to him on the phone. And,
oh, wow.
Yeah. And I thought that was pretty comical. Because I'm pretty sure that guy is not. He's either, he thinks he's being funny or he is certifiably off.
There's a gentleman I've talked to that from roughly the same area that I'm kind of wondering if it's the same guy. He
I
didn't
was
mention
thinking
it.
that too.
Yes, he didn't mention Atlantis, but everything else
No.
sounds eerily familiar.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
This
yeah.
this gentleman has requested twice now for us to just cancel out all of our speakers at the Paracon, and just to let him run it because everyone will come to hear him speak, and he should just be it for our Paracon. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if
we've
it's
had
the
to
same
very
guy.
politely turn him down.
Had to decline that one.
Yes.
Well, you never know. He might be pretty interesting. I'm telling you, it was entertaining. I mean, I'm sitting here about 10 minutes into the conversation. I knew I was in trouble. And
Yeah.
and I was in that conversation for an hour and a half, and I couldn't get away, minding my manners. But
Yes.
the guy, for what it's worth, I don't remember the guy's name. I wouldn't mention it now anyway. But I looked him up, and he owns land.
Hmm.
I looked him up on the county assessor. And so he's a real person. He pays taxes. He apparently, I'm assuming he has a job or some form of income. I mean, he can't be 100% crazy. I mean, people are amazing, but what if that guy really has Bigfoot on his property? And what if, people, we laugh about the Atlantis thing, but I believe Atlantis was real. I mean, I believe in the pre-Diluvian flood theory and all that stuff. And I get out there on some pretty crazy stuff myself, but I don't believe that I have Atlantis on the family farm down there.
Yeah.
But anyway, it is neither here nor there. But the part where I kind of lost it with him was where, if we danced just right in the moonlight, the Mama Bigfoot would give us her blessing, and I was just like, yeah.
Ooh. Ooh.
Bring my video recorder. We'll dance.
Oh my goodness.
Are the clothes on or off for this dance?
I was gonna ask. I was like, is it just the dancing, or was there like nudity involved, or
This is going down a bad road.
I don't know. That part will probably remain a mystery. So I don't know. But
I think even if I knew the answer to that, it'd be a mystery.
yeah. Well, you live and you learn, and I mean, I kind of feel like an ass making fun of the guy, but there's different levels, and I mean, people come to you and they're very, skittish, and they're not sure that they want to talk to you, and I try to treat everybody with respect. It takes a lot for me to not believe somebody to the point where I'm not going to fill out a case file. Because the way I look at it, I'm not the judge here. It's not my job to judge. It's my job to write down what people tell and to document it. Because what sounds crazy, what sounded crazy 30 years ago, people are talking about it today like it's common knowledge. So, but the whole dancing in the moonlight with Mama Sasquatch, I kind of lost it. Pushed me over the edge, dude. You pushed me over the edge.
Oh my goodness. That might be the opportune moment to end the evening on the dancing with Mama Sasquatch story.
I walked into the bedroom.
Yep. Well, Brian, man, thanks for coming and hanging out with us. It's been a fun conversation. Like I said earlier, I mean, you're more welcome to come back anytime you want, or
just call me.
Good times, and For those listening, look up Brian if you're interested in what he's into, and if you got input for him, reach out to him by all means.
Pick up his
Yeah,
book.
definitely.
It doesn't
Yep,
look like that on Amazon though.
I'll say I think Enzo posted the link to Amazon in the Facebook group, so and I'll put
Oh,
all
great.
that on
You go see
the
it.
up.
Thank you, Enzo.
Yeah, we'll put that up on the
He's a good egg.
the podcast, the audio version up on iTunes or wherever you listen. That being said, guys, we'll catch you next episode.
All right.
Night, everyone.